At the end of 2023, Alexander the Great had his second wind in Rise of Kingdoms. His popularity spiked, and that was all thanks to one man, Liu Che. But that was over 2 years ago, and I know what you're thinking, Omniarch, there's no way Liu Che is 2 years old. And yeah, he's 2 years old already. That is actually insane. Man, time flies. I still feel like Liu Che is a new commander, but the point of this video is to address the question, now that a couple of years have passed, is Alexander the Great still really powerful in the end game? And what about in the early game in season 2 when he first comes around? Is he still good there? Those are the questions we're going to answer today. But first, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Now, as you guys know, I'm a sponsored partner creator with Rise of Kingdoms, so if you want more raw content, consider subscribing down below. But let's jump right in here and first talk about why Alexander the Great was so good with Liu Che. And if you've seen any of my videos and my guides talking about this, you already know the answer, right? But Liu Che's expertise brought something new to the game called a combo attack. And basically, a combo attack is just another basic attack, but it does not trigger an enemy counter attack, and it can occur on the same turn as a basic attack. So you kind of just do double damage that turn, or at least in the case of Liu Che. And since then, they've made combo attack damage a thing, and now combo attack damage ranges in its damage factor, but originally it was just 200 damage factor. And the cool part about combo attacks is that they have a chance to trigger things that would normally trigger from a regular basic attack, and that really helped out Alexander the Great a lot, because his second skill is where a lot of his damage comes from. It is a 10% chance to deal 1700 damage factor. And the reason that Alexander the Great kind of fell off before Liu Che came into the game is because, well, most of the stats on his kit are attack, and back then attack was the least valuable stat in the game, point for point, just objectively, right? I'm not saying it was useless, but I'm just saying you had way more attack than anything else for basically every troop type, and his active skill didn't deal any damage. It was just a shield and a massive debuff, and that was pretty much it. So he was on the bench, he was a little bit squishy, he didn't have a lot of damage. But with Liu Che, people found that his second skill procced way more often than you would expect, and the fact that he gave Liu Che so much attack and march speed actually made that march perform really well. And again, if you guys have watched my channel over the last 2 years, you'll know that in back-to-back KVKs, Liu Che Alex was constantly my strongest march over and over and over again. The numbers spoke for themselves. It was just a march that did well, and really it was good because you didn't even have to think about it, right? If you had a PC and you had a good connection, you just went in and out of combat and you just tapped them and you would get that damage, right? Because remember, the meta that this march actually existed in was super fast paced, because so many commanders output so much damage that really the skirmishes would be very brief, right? You would hit somebody for 2 or 3 turns before you would retreat back into your murder ball, because otherwise you would get swarmed down and die literally within like 3 seconds, right? Like the damage output and the DPS was just so high around that time. And so this is where Alexander the Great really shined, because you didn't have to stick to that target, and it didn't matter that it was 1700, because you would just get it for free just by tapping somebody, right? You would just get lucky. And this is still where Alexander the Great shines, because you can pop out of your city and tap people with him. But the point is, in the meta, and given the context of that meta, and given the context of combo attacks being new and everything else that was going on, this march performed really, really well. Now though, is that still the case? Well, Rise of Kingdoms, and I've alluded to this in previous videos, but Rise of Kingdoms has made a couple of really big changes. I just pulled my key off my keyboard somehow. How did that even happen? I'm not even typing, I'm not even doing anything. What the heck? Oh, I'm just so freaking strong. I don't even know how strong I am. Anyway, God, that's so cringe. Anyway, there's been a couple of really big changes to the game, especially in the last 6 to 12 months, that have really hindered Alexander the Great's effectiveness, okay? And number one is the DPS, or the damage per second, of the game has actually gone down a little bit. And you may not have noticed this, but the developers were able to achieve this in a variety of ways. First of all, when you enter KVK, or you enter the Lost Kingdom, you get a buff that gives you 40% all damage, or at least that's how it used to be. Now it is only 30% all damage. And furthermore, they actually changed crystal tech. So before, you would get over 40% of attack for any of the troop types, but now you're able to get up to 15% defense and 15% health, with a reduction in the amount of attack that you get, being a total of, I think, 12.5% total. It's 7.5 here and 5 here. Yeah, so 12.5%. So you actually get less attack than you do any other stat in crystal tech. And those two things right out of the gate really reduce the amount of damage that everybody on the board was dealing. And what that means is it was slightly less mandatory to hit and run your targets. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still really bad to get caught out of position, right? You still will get swarmed down. There's still commanders in the game like Liu Che that output tremendous amount of damage. The DPS of Emperor Qin is insane, right? So don't get me wrong, you still have to play smart, but we are no longer in a world where you instantly pop, right? Which was basically what it was like. If you had a lag spike in KVK, even for a second, your marches on yellow or dead, right? So that's the first thing that really hurt Alexander the Great over the last few months, was the change to crystal tech. The second thing that really hurts Alexander the Great is the change to alliance technology. Rapid March 1 and Rapid March 2 were actually changed for the first time ever in Rise of Kingdoms. 7 years later, they actually changed alliance tech, and what they did was they changed the way that it functioned. So before, you would gain a massive march speed bonus, 22% by the way, if you were targeting alliance territory. Now you only get this march speed if you are in alliance territory. And what this means is, you know, back in the day, the way that people would run Liu Che Alex is you would send them out of your city, right? And as you can see, I am not on alliance territory. So what I would do is I would be in dot mode and I would be, you know, fighting something over here, and then I tap them for a little bit and then I press R on my keyboard, and that would immediately send my army back to my city, right? I know it looks a little bit weird when I'm zoomed out, but it's targeting my actual city, and my city is on alliance territory. So even when you were in enemy territory or just outside your own territory, whenever you would hit R, you would actually retreat really fast because you would have that 22% march speed bonus, right? That's gone now. Now you only get that march speed when you're actually walking around in your alliance territory. And we can actually view this right here. As soon as this dot crosses into territory, you'll see that it actually speeds up a little bit, right? So boom, there you go. And now the dot, it might be hard to tell over video, but it's actually moving a little bit faster. Okay, so my point is, now that you retreat slower than you did before, it's actually harder to do the hit and run method that made Alexander the Great so powerful behind a Liu Che. And the third thing that was kind of the nail in the coffin for Alexander the Great was the introduction of Bai Qi. Now this is another 5 target smite damage AoE infantry commander, okay? And this is a big change from the previous infantry release with William Wallace, because everyone thought that William Wallace would actually be the thing that benches Alexander the Great, and some people did, right? Some people swear by William Wallace, but when you do the math, you discover that he actually doesn't output that much more damage than Alexander the Great, at least in the previous meta, because the previous meta again was really hit and run heavy, and you don't get that much value out of William Wallace during hit and runs, especially because, I mean, he's a single target damage commander. So even if you stuck to the target all the way through to the secondary's active skill, it's not like you're going to get this massive spike in damage. It's just hitting one target, right? So sure, a lot of people would argue that William Wallace could be a micro optimization to your Liu Che March, but again, Alexander the Great was just so easy to use and people already had him, and then they actually gave him a museum relic to make him even more relevant, right? We actually have 20% defense and 6% normal damage taken reduction, right? So you would think that William Wallace would kill him, but actually it was Bai Qi. Bai Qi was the one that actually, I think in my opinion, put Alexander the Great into the grave. And the reason for that is because even though he didn't have the sort of benefit of the instant proc that Alexander the Great has, he had nearly as much attack and a little bit less march speed, which by the way, I think that's a very underrated perk of Alexander the Great, is that he is the fastest infantry commander in the game with 30% march speed. Very good stuff there. Infantry is very slow. So okay, Bai Qi has a little bit less attack and a little bit less march speed, but he still has a lot of that, and his active skill just hits like a truck. I mean, this is an even stronger 5 target smite damage than we saw on Liu Che, and everyone talked about how powerful Liu Che's active skill was, right? And so not only that, he's got the smite tree and he's got a lot of other cool things on his kit. And so Bai Qi was just, I mean, he's basically an AoE William Wallace, right? Like it's the same damage factor, but you hit 5 targets. Like it's actually a huge spike in damage output. And so these 3 things, the nerfing of the retreat march speed, the lowering of DPS across the board, and a much stronger alternative in the form of Bai Qi, are the things that I think really put Alexander the Great in the grave. Now here's the thing, can you still use Alexander the Great? Absolutely, right? I still think that hit and run combat is a thing, it's just not as good as it once was. And so you're not going to pull down those insane reports that you could see if you watch back at my previous videos where I do like KVK recaps, for example, and I show you all the crazy reports that I got with Alexander the Great as a secondary, you're probably not going to get those, right? The other thing too is that you can still use it, of course, as a second march. You could also use it as a cheeseburgering march, and in fact I still think that this is one of the best cheeseburgering marches in the entire game, the other one being obviously Liu Che with Philip. Where's my Philip? Here he is. And this is kind of another thing, right? Philip is arguably another reason why Alexander the Great is used a lot less now, because Philip is basically the same thing. His damage factor is lower, but it hits 3 targets, so it comes out to be about 1730 damage factor if I remember correctly, so it is like very slightly better, but he's got 30% all damage, and sure, his march speed's a little bit lower, but you know, all in all, Philip would be a safer investment in 2025 than Alexander the Great, strictly because you can use him with any troop type. Now, is Philip still useful in Rise of Kingdoms? For now, he's great behind Arthur, but honestly, I don't know if I would invest in Philip in Rise of Kingdoms today. He's nearly a year old already, and his damage output is not very high, especially now that we're out of the hit and run meta. So again, he's great behind Arthur, right? But I think Arthur's about to get a combo commander pairing, and if that happens, I think we'll probably see the same thing we saw with Bai Chi, right? Bai Chi kind of forced Alexander the Great to take the bench, and in the same way, I think whoever King Arthur is going to be paired with next when it comes to combo, that might force Philip on the bench. I have no, it might not. We'll have to wait and see. It might be bad, right? It might be single target, it might be this, that, or the other thing, but I bet it will probably put Philip on the bench. Or if you're running multiple calves, maybe you run 2 combo, you know, trees, and you have the Delta formation on both of them, and then you run Arthur Philip and this new guy with whoever else, Bertrand or whatever you want to do. We'll have to wait and see. That's all speculation, but my point is I would hold off on investing in Philip, wait till we see the next calves before you make that decision, but that's not the point of this video. Okay, the point is Alexander the Great's second wind is definitely faded quite a bit over the last 6 months, and then the question becomes, should you still invest in him, and is he good in season 2? Well, those are some great questions. First of all, if you don't have him yet, I would not invest in him, but if you're a brand new player, you know, you are going to get the commander swap feature at the end of KVK 2, and so investing in Alexander the Great actually isn't a horrible idea, right? Because you could just swap him away for somebody else once you get there, and then no harm no foul, you're able to use him for a very brief moment before you actually get rid of him, and that's totally possible as well. So in KVK 2, is he good in KVK 2, right? I think the answer is yes. I think if you're going to run infantry in KVK 2, you're probably going to run Chook with Alexander the Great. I think the only other pairing you could consider would be something like Pyrrhus, right? However, despite the 20% bonus to normal damage, I don't love Pyrrhus's kit entirely. I think it's fine, right? I think it's totally solid, and I could see the argument for a Chook Pyrrhus combo 100%. The thing about Alexander the Great though is that he does have more stats than Pyrrhus, and he's going to hit harder, and he's a lot faster, and man, making targets take 30% more damage for 4 seconds is very underrated. That is a massive debuff on the expertise here of Alexander the Great. So yeah, that plus the fact that his instant proc is even stronger than the active skill on Pyrrhus, right? Now you could make the argument that if you did a Pyrrhus primary, Chook secondary, you actually could time this normal damage bonus with the active skill of Chook, right? But then you're sacrificing the smite tree, right? Then you're going to be using the defense tree for open field PvP and KVK2. I guess, right? You could try it. I just don't really love that. Now, if you're only going to invest in one infantry commander in KVK2, it's probably Chook, right? I mean, he has almost as much attack. He's got half the amount of march speed, which definitely a downside, right? But the active skill, I mean, it's a 3 target 1500 AoE, like that's solid, right? I mean, it is. Plus you're cleansing your debuffs here, which is quite good. I think you'll probably see a lot of like Ethelfleds and stuff in KVK2 still, unfortunately, right? For the free-to-play players, but also the expertise gives you a nice little bonus smite damage, right? Whenever you take skill, smite, or combo damage, you have a 50% chance to reduce it by 50% and then deal another 500 smite damage, which is pretty good. So again, one infantry commander for KVK2, it's probably Chook, but you definitely can pair him with Alexander the Great and feel pretty good about that, right? You're going to be a little bit more supportive. There's a lot of utility on Alexander the Great, and you know, if you do end up doing that in and out instant proc combat, you're going to get a lot of value out of the 1700 that you're not going to get out of like the active skill of Pyrrhus, right? So okay, he's not super great in Season of Conquest anymore, and if you're past KVK2, you shouldn't invest in him anymore, of course, right? If you're just going into Season 2 and you're a whale and you're going to max out multiple infantry commanders for KVK2, Alexander the Great is a good choice. Just make sure you swap him later down the line when you get that chance. And finally, the last question we have to answer is there anything that could give Alexander the Great his third wind, right? Is there ever a chance of him coming back into the meta once again? And the answer to that is maybe. I think it's unlikely, but let's go ahead and answer that really quick. If we jump into the museum, we know that Alexander the Great will eventually get, most likely, a third relic tier, and what we would want to see here to make him more relevant would be at least to double the normal damage taken reduction. If they bumped this up to 12%, I think that could go a long way to give him some tankiness. I think he doesn't need more defense, right? If we look at infantry commanders, their typical gear sets, other infantry commanders in the meta, infantry defense is pretty easy to come by still, so I don't think he needs more defense, but a really high normal damage taken reduction would be quite good, because not only will this make you take less damage every turn, but it also would reduce the amount of damage you take from smite damage and combo damage, because those do scale off of normal damage, right? So that would make him a little bit more tanky as well. And then of course we would need to see another new infantry commander really capitalize on that combo attack, right? Like another infantry commander that had more combo attacks, not just one but maybe 2 or 3. That would definitely help Alexander the Great once again. The downside of that is I don't think it's going to happen, right? I actually don't even know if the devs realized when they made Liu Che, if they knew what they were doing with combo attacks. I think it kind of like evolved into this really cool thing. I don't know if that like was planned. Like, did they plan to make combo attacks as strong as they were and then just kind of run with it and go with combo attack damage? Because they actually changed the wording of this skill. If you guys remember, it used to say that you had a 25% chance to launch an extra normal attack, right? And that was underlined, and you would tap on it and it would say that you're not going to take another counter attack and yada yada yada, right? So combo attacks weren't even a thing when Liu Che was put into the game, but I think the developers maybe like saw how much you could do with that and kind of just ran with it, right? So yeah, now that combo attacks officially are their own thing and not just this exclusive Liu Che perk on the expertise, I doubt that we're going to see more infantry get combo attacks, because that's pretty much the job of cavalry at this point. We see combo attack damage on King Arthur and on Bertrand, and probably with the upcoming cavalries as well. So all that to say, the things that we would need to see in the game come true in order to make Alexander the Great great again are pretty unlikely. I think it's very unlikely Alexander the Great gets a third wind, but you never know, right? You never know. I mean, it doesn't even need to be combo attacks. There could be, you know, a new formation that comes out that says, you know, effects that have a chance to occur off a basic attack are doubled, right? And then all of a sudden this is not 1700, it's 3400, right? And then boom, Alexander the Great's back in the meta again. So it's not impossible that he becomes meta again, but it definitely is unlikely. But I just wanted to make this video kind of addressing Alexander the Great in 2025, now that we've seen so many big changes to the instant proc meta in the last couple of months. I don't want people to see my older guides and get this impression that Alexander the Great is still this like powerhouse that you could just slap behind Liu Che and not even think about it. It's just going to farm kills. That is not the case. Those days are pretty much over, and you can still use him in a second march or something like that, maybe a third march for infantry, but it's not going to be what it once was. So I just wanted to make this video to clear that up. But guys, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, consider dropping a thumbs up on it. It really does help out the channel a ton. It helps push this video out to the YouTube algorithm so other Rise of Kingdoms players might see it. And while you're down there, consider subscribing to the channel. I know a lot of you guys are actually not subscribed, even though you think you are, and we are so close to 100,000 subscribers, which is insane. Comment down below your thoughts on Alexander the Great. Are you still using him and getting great reports, or do you think he's garbage now? Let me know in the comment section below. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Peace.